Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. Better Outcomes Training Podcast. And Craig, still here with Paul, lead founder, head facilitator of Better Outcomes. Paul, how are you?
I'm extraordinarily well, Cuz. How you doing, my man? Good to be back.
Extraordinarily well. You hit me with them all the time. That opening salvo always gets me going. Always gets me going.
Electrifying indeed, yeah.
Electrifying. So today, we're all about leadership. We're gonna focus on leadership today. So maybe you're a leader, maybe you're having a few leadership issues, you want some insights, maybe you're just being promoted to being a leader, maybe you have aspirations of becoming a leader and you want to know what it's all about. This is the place for you. Tune in, sit down, grab a cup of tea or coffee or whatever floats your boat, and we will try and delve into this topic a little bit, see what we can find from the great man here and all the knowledge, and see if we can get you a little bit of help along the way. If not, there's always the socials you can catch us on and find out what we have to offer at the website and all our services. Mr. Harrison, leadership. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Absolutely, Craig. It's a real challenge. I think there's a lot of people who have big aspirations of leadership, and I understand why. But it's not always glitz and glamour. So a lot of time it's not glitz and glamour. You have to deal with a lot of the challenges that not just you face within the business, but certainly that people face as individuals as well. And we're in an obviously dynamic business environment with so many changes that are happening, and including sort of the reflections on COVID, the demand now driving demand with regards to flexible working hours, and all the rest of it. And it's a lot of leadership. It's something that if it's not done well, it can really cost the company. It really is significant. A lot of businesses I've worked with in the past, you can see significant differences between great leadership and mediocre leadership as well. And it has an impact on so many different areas. And that's why really one of my fires that I love to be able to sort of work on is being able to give a lot of these emerging leaders and even established leaders a real ability to be confident in what they do, and then of course cutting edge techniques to be able to influence and persuade, communicate, lead, win hearts and minds, and get people more committed to an outcome rather than just compliant in doing it, which is a real challenge.
Absolutely, it's a challenge. It's we've spoken about it before a couple of times, where not a lot of leaders have formal training. They're kind of thrust into the role for one reason or another, and find themselves, whether they wanted that or not, find themselves out of their depth. And it can really ruin people. It's a really bit of a tough one.
Absolutely.
One question that gets me, though, is the difference between leadership and management. Now, talk to me about that one, because there's differing opinions there. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, because there's this. I mean, here's the truth of the matter. It's with commonly used words, and there's a lot of them. Obviously, in any industry, there can be commonly used words. And I know as soon as I say that, there's everybody in different industries will say, "Oh, acronyms are always thrown around." But in the training world, particularly the corporate training world, there's a lot of words that are used and can have almost different definitions to different people based on their past experiences with it. So anytime if I said, okay, what's the difference between leadership and management, and went around the room of 20 people in one of my classes, I could maybe get 7 or 8 different definitions. And it doesn't really serve my purpose to go out and correct everybody with regards to what the exact definition is by the dictionary. I need to understand how people perceive these things first, and then really sort of start setting some frames from there. But from a broad definition, what I like to work with is very often management is managing systems and procedures and things effectively. So tangible aspects, a lot more tangible. And I know that's doing disservice because there's going to be some managers who are sitting here thinking, no, it's not just about systems and procedures. I get that absolutely. But again, we've got a lot of different sectors that listen to these podcasts. So broadly, it's what can I manage? What are the tangibles that I can manage, that I can systematize, that I can process, that I can focus on and get KPIs in the end? I think leadership is a lot more based around being able to align people with a particular vision, really being able to win those hearts and minds, which again is another massively commonly used term in our industry. Telling people to win hearts and minds, yes, but how do you actually do that? But I think that's what great leadership does. I think great leadership really can be able to be able to have a high degree of emotional intelligence, be able to understand who they're saying, and have a real presence that people actually want to follow and want to lead that person. So that would be my sort of very broad, unspecified definition of the two. I think if I was to really boil it down, management is very much about the systems and procedures and KPIs and day-to-day operations. Maybe I'd say leadership is the longer term, more the visions, winning hearts and minds, getting people aligned with a particular outcome, and getting everybody on the bus, if I can use another term that's very often used in the training world. I don't know if that's specific enough for you, but that would probably be a broad way that I would start with it. Yeah,
that's roughly the way I look at it too. Now, a bit of a disclaimer for me: all my leadership experience comes the construction sector.
Absolutely.
That's where I come at it from, and I will always refer to it as guys, because the majority of people that I've worked with have been blokes, males in the construction industry. I have worked with a lot of females over time, a lot of talented, brilliant women over the years, and to me, that's there's different styles as well when you lead blokes as to when, or for me, for when I'm in charge of men, as a be in charge of women as well. But being from the construction industry, I see it pretty much the same as you. To me, management is more office-based, planning ahead of the leaders that are on the ground. You've got everything from leading hands, who are usually in charge, depending on the company, maybe somewhere between 4 and 10 people, and then supervisors above them, foremen above them. Maybe the site manager has a bit more of a hands-on role, but essentially he's trying to stay ahead of the foreman. So that's where I'm pretty much down the same lines as you. Leaders, is there such a thing as a born leader?
Yeah, well, this is where this whole conversation with regards to nature and nurture comes in, and I've heard compelling arguments on both sides. Listen, I think that there are people who are born maybe with a genetic predisposition towards being good in a certain area, and maybe having components that would make them into leadership type people. Very similar to how you would have people who might have a genetic predisposition to being a great athlete or a good basketball player or something. You got to be reasonably tall to be a basketball player, or great sprinters are built in certain ways and what have you. So I think that there is certainly people who have got genetic predispositions. However, what I will always say, and I'll always say this, and everybody listening to this, they will probably say that I'm biased, and they're probably right because we work in training, is that I believe everything can be trained. And particularly when it comes to soft skills, and leadership is all about those soft skills. And I think that if I have somebody who's got an open mind, somebody who's keen to learn, somebody who is, going to apply the learnings and stuff like that, then effectively, even if I've got two people, somebody who's got a predisposition towards great leadership, and somebody who maybe doesn't have that 5% advantage, because I think it's maybe a 5% advantage, but it's going to work and develop themselves and hone themselves and educate themselves and just make professional development part of their ongoing life, then I will back the person who will be developing themselves on a regular basis. And I'll tell you, and Kaz, you'll know this as well, man, some of the greatest leadership that I've worked with, some of the most phenomenal people who I've had, my clients, so many of my clients are like this. And They are people who are absolutely open to ongoing professional development. They're always, to use a term, they're always sharpening the saw. You know, the old saying with regards to, if I'm going to cut down if you give me 3 hours to cut down a tree, for the first 2 hours, I'm sharpening the saw. You know, that type of thing. But they're always looking to refine their approach, particularly in highly competitive market environments, where they know that they want to get an earned advantage, you know, in the marketplace to support their teams. And those are beautiful people to work with. They're absolutely phenomenal. And again, maybe I'm extraordinarily biased here because I do work in training, but when people are so open to learning and, you know, not just following established routes, but reading outside their industries as well, learning about skill sets of people outside of their industry, even going back and researching great leaders from history. And again, you know, I do look at, there's obviously, you know, politicians are high profile. There's some high profile business leaders as well from history as well. But also, and I mean, this is one of the many reasons I don't get invited to dinner parties too often, but things like military leaders, you know, and it's like, well, are you going to go to war? No, you're not. But I mean, listen, you know, a lot of those components that military leaders would have, you would need to have those as somebody who's going to, you know, take on big challenges, overcome them, be able to unify an army or a company of people, particularly people, and particularly as the world gets smaller and we get more interconnected, and you know there's more cultural integration and stuff like that. You know, you have to bring in people with different backgrounds to work together, which is exactly the same as, you're going to love this now, but making reference back to Hannibal of Carthage. You know, a lot of his army, they weren't all Carthaginians. They were mercenaries from all over the place. And, you know, I still can't get through my head how you are able to unify people to work in harmony like that. And these people don't even have a common language between each other, you know? So it's,
Amazing.
yeah, fascinating stuff. There's always different ways of thinking about these things, which is beautiful to see.
Agreed. Especially when you talked about the some of the best leaders you've seen, about how they have that growth mindset. What I've noticed about people with that growth mindset is that they're a lot more open to discussions, ideas, opportunities, because they're wanting to hear. It's like they don't have an ego.
Yeah.
They're happy to stop dead in their tracks if someone says, I think we can do it this way. Listen to them. All right, maybe they can, maybe they can't. Take that little bit away and move on. Some of the great coaches, sports coaches,
you
can look to them and what they've, like you said, with outside of your arena, getting other people with skills. Like you get cross-code training all the time now in sports and elite level sports. And they take skills from one particular sport and incorporate it in theirs. They get, let's take Melbourne Storm. They were harassed years ago and taken apart in the media because they get wrestling coaches in.
Really? Wow.
And they were taught how to hold them down in the tackle, which slows the player the ball down. I might be not speaking to a lot of the audience here. So basically in the game of rugby, what they discovered in the game of rugby league, they discovered that like when you make a tackle, your team has to run back 10 meters. But if you delay that tackle just for a couple of seconds by wrestling and being on top and being dominant, holding the opposition down, they couldn't play the ball as fast, which means your players got that vital 2 or 3 second rest.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like much, but when you're talking hundreds of tackles a game, that's hundreds. That's the little 1%ers that I think you're alluding to.
Absolutely.
Chase those 1%ers, and over the game, that's a massive amount. You got a lot of fuel in the tank at the end. So if you look at that game situation as business over the year, those 1%ers add up to a massive margin at the end, whether it be time, energy, profit, whatever.
Yeah.
So that I think there's a very healthy, that's a very healthy way of looking at things. Instead of just staying in your closed bubble and this is all we can have, let's those growth mindset you always talk about. Let's go and see what's out there. Hey, I learned about this. Maybe I can incorporate some of these learnings and change it to suit us, that kind of thing. Lovely.
And I'll mention this as well, Cuz, there is a book that came out a good few years ago now. And the book's name is The Blue Ocean Strategy. The Blue Ocean Strategy. And what they talk about there is how you emerge, you go from what the authors called a red ocean into a blue ocean. So a red ocean is a very saturated market. So it's a market where there's a lot of competitors, and you can think of it as sharks in the ocean that are sort of tearing each other to bits because they're cutting each other's prices. And therefore, it's quite graphic.
Blood in the water.
There's a lot of blood in the water. So it's a red ocean. And what the authors of that were talking about was they put a concept together of leaving the red ocean and going into a blue ocean. And they have this thing called the ERRC tool, which is, certain things they want to, some tweaks they want to make to move into new oceans. But one of the concepts there is, what can I create? So what is the new thing that I can do that I can create in my industry to give me, to allow me to move into that blue ocean where I just don't have that same level of competition, and therefore they're not as price sensitive. And one of the top tips around that with regards to thinking about what's a new approach I can create is look outside your industry. I'll give you an example of this. To the best of my understanding, Uber, when Uber came into the taxi market, they were looking at all of the things that the taxi market was doing well, what they wanted to do better about the taxi market, and what they wanted to remove about it, and all of this good stuff. They thought, okay, what can we create in order to be able to get an advantage in that marketplace? So they looked outside their industry and they thought, okay, well, how about we get an app together for that? So an app is going to allow a high degree of peace of mind with regards to who's the driver who's picking you up, then the time, the set price, all of those certain things. So they could actually bring that in from other industries, because of course, a lot of other industries were using apps. It's like, okay, well, that can be, in your hand here, and you could be researching, you could be, seeing that, you've seen the time, seeing the cost, all of that good stuff, which creates the peace of mind, which then has people using it more so. But the thing was, with looking outside the industry with that real growth mindset, you can start seeing what are other industries doing that we could maybe incorporate into our situation. But here's the thing, because again, people, I think this is a default setting of the human brain, is very often we get caught up in our own way of thinking, and just what our industry is doing, what our competitors are doing, all of this, which of course is beautiful stuff to learn. And it's great to have your finger on the pulse of your industry, of course. But if I'm looking to innovate, if I'm looking to move forward, if I'm looking to support my team, support my clients, all of this stuff, what can I find from outside that is going to be able to help us with this? And I think that again, coming back to that learning, coming back to that growth mindset, as you've identified there, and it's a nice way of, it's a really nice way of motivating your team as well. I think if you've got a leader who is always looking outside the industry and they're coming back with certain things we can try, or we can, new things we can try, or folks, I learned this new approach here. I've got a lunch and learn session. I want you to all come in. I'm going to teach it to you. And they live feeling better about themselves as well. It's like my CEO or whoever, my leaders come in and taught me this. Actually, I'll tell you, this is something I'll come back to shortly. But when you're sitting there and you're thinking your leader's actually taking time out to go out and learn something, come back and talk to me. Now I feel like more of an asset to the business. Yes. You feel invested in, which is awesome. And I'll tell you this. One of the things I always say anytime I'm training leaders and what have you, I say, listen, folks, please, anything I teach you here that I'm teaching directly for you, that you feel will be beneficial for your team, please teach them, please train them, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, my responsibility is to make sure I can teach you new concepts in an easy to understand and applicable way, so you're going to go and apply them tomorrow. I'm not just going to give you hypothetical stuff that sounds good, but actually stuff that you can really apply. That's one level of learning, but then I have to give it to you in context so you can see how you can use it in your real life, and then you go away and apply it so you get those deeper levels of learning. When you start teaching this stuff to other people, then effectively you start taking a much deeper ownership of those actual strategies, techniques, Yep. But here's the other thing. Your team is battling with challenges as well. And if you can see certain things that I can teach you, that I can help you with, go and teach them as well. And it's like, when you can do that, then, your team starts feeling more inspired. It's like, my leadership's feeling positive about this, and supporting me on this, investing more in me, and I think that's very cool. I really think that's very cool, and it starts to inspire people. They see themselves as an asset to the business, and you really start creating that phenomenal growth mindset.
Yes, and it goes back to what we spoke about on one of the earlier podcasts, where we talked about training and professional development, in personal development. Having a leader that comes back and talks to you about stuff and gets you going, and maybe gets one person out of the crew interested in that, just it's life-changing.
Yeah,
a lot of it can be life-changing. So
absolutely.
Now
there's also something that happens as well, because sorry, just before we get into the next one, there's also something referred to, I believe, as a cathartic effect. The cathartic effect, I believe, is when you have a moment of reflection, you get those good, where serotonin or dopamine feeling. But after you've learned something new that you can go in a way and apply, you get that cathartic effect.
Yes.
And it's a nice feeling to have with it, that people have in that. And I think, again, this is one of those things that really gets people into that world of feeling good about professional development. And again, maybe I'm biased in saying this, probably I am, but that ongoing aspect with regards to those good feelings after learning stuff, I think gets people falling in love with the process of learning. And I really believe that so many challenges can be overcome with that type of approach.
It gets the ball rolling. For me, it does. It just gets that ball rolling, stimulates me a little bit to want to go, let's go and have a look at that. Let's see what's there. It's been life-changing for me. Getting back to that growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Life-changing. Now, skills of a good leader. You touched earlier on how you think maybe possibly a born leader is maybe 5% more natural attributes than someone who's working towards it. What kind of things are we looking to train our leaders specifically on? Like, what kind of areas are we looking for them to, like you said, for stuff that not so much stuff they can take away straight away, but areas that they can work on? What's the common ones that you see a lot of leaders coming to you and saying, listen, I need some help with this, need a little bit of talk around that? What, communication, motivation, things like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that come through there. I think the first thing, and I know frequent listeners of this podcast are going to have heard me say this before, but really I make no apology for saying it. But I have to be able to instill a degree of confidence in anybody who's going to do any leadership, because the thing is when we don't have confidence, then all of our communication skills break down, from the aspect of not being able to think clearly in the moment and communicate well, right up to the sleepless nights because you don't feel that you have the confidence or the skill sets to deal with the challenges that you're faced with in leadership, and particularly with change management. But once that's in place, the ability, I think it comes down to a few things. I think firstly, the ability to communicate with yourself is crucial. So being able to ask yourself positively loaded, empowering questions, to be able to ask yourself, instead of saying, I'm so stupid, or why can't I do this? That's a negatively framed question. My answer will come back and say, because Paul, you're an idiot. That's why. Okay. Probably quite fair. But if it's like, okay, well, let me positively frame that. How do I think about this in a different way and actually get my brain using for something productive here? You could ask yourself that question, well, how can I do this? And maybe you don't have the answer straight away, but it's over time you start coming up with better and better answers. Again, they might not be perfect, but they're getting closer to it. So I think firstly, your self-communication, how you communicate with yourself. And what I find with a lot of clients, a lot of people in general, and we've all been through this, and I'm hoping it's a stage for everybody. It certainly was a stage for me. When I say hoping it's a stage for everybody, what I mean is I'm hoping everybody sort of gets through it. But I think, if on my heart of hearts, I think a lot of people sort of stay there. But just beating yourself up mentally and emotionally, it's saying bad things to yourself and saying things to yourself that you would never say to anybody else. It's sort of the way that you would berate yourself. And I think that's a very real problem. Again, I think it's how, with human beings having a negative, a negative tendency on a lot of things that we notice. We tend to notice the negatives way before the positives, including in what we do, and we beat ourselves up about that. But I think communication with self is very important to start with. Communication, of course, with other people is crucial, but anybody will say that to you. So what do I mean specifically? I think it's important to be able to understand other people's views of the world. Okay. And again, that is something, it just sounds like lip service. And everybody will say, yeah, well, Paul, tell me something I don't know. It's like, if I, whenever I say to people, and one of these 4 commandments, it's like, you need to meet your target audience at their view of the world. And what I mean by that is, if I meet you at your view of the world, because whenever I say that, I get some funny looks. It's like people are thinking, well, what if I don't agree with their view of the world? And that's a good point. But I think, as I've said before as well, if I understand your view of the world, you and I can have a different point of view on something. But if I understand how you perceive things, I can communicate in a way we can find common ground. So I think that's a big thing. And I think with people, a lot of the time, the vast majority of time, people don't do that. They just talk from their point of view. And it's not intentional. But I think the point of view we have is purely a byproduct of everything we've been through, and everybody's got that unique situation. Sorry, mate, you want to jump in there?
I did want to jump in there. I agree with that bit 100%. Plus, I think as a leader, sometimes you have to also not only try and meet someone at where they see the world, like you said, how they see the world, but a lot of the time you also have to understand what their area expertise is and their skill set.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I see people put in charge and don't recognize a certain member of their team's skill set, and they won't defer to it. So there's a lot of times over the years where I know that I'm not good at something, and I'll find the bloke who's working with me. I'll go, dude, I need some help with this door. Yeah. I know you're the best at it. Or he'll come to me and say, you're doing this wrong. You have to be open to that part as well. You really have to, because like you said, you can both come at the problem from the same point of view, especially if you know their area expertise. You may not take it to them. You may take it to someone else. I may not take it to you. I may take it to Dave or Johan or someone like that, because that's where I know, after getting those good conversations going and finding out about my team, I know he's good at that.
Yeah.
So I know you're really good at this. Next time I've got a problem with that, I'll get you in and help me as well. We'll nut it out. But Dave's good at this one, so we'll crack it with him. So that's just my little two cents on the end of that.
I've got a question for you on that, Cuz, before we circle back to the rest of your questions. How do you, because we talk about this a lot in delegation, and people very often are scared to delegate work because for a number of different reasons, but one of which is assuming that they're going to get the pushback that somebody else is, somebody says no to them, they're too busy or what have you. How would you, knowing somebody's specific area of strength, how would you go across and communicate with them so that they're committed to helping you with that piece of work, rather than the very real fear that a lot of my clients have that they're going to get pushback in communicating for that help?
I think it's that you got to know your team. You've got to know that person well. You've got to have good rapport with them.
Yeah.
You've got to know, maybe not all about them, but you've got to know why they're there, why they want to do this job, and like the area expertise, their view on the world. Get them behind that. And if the way I usually do things is I'll ask them what they want to do, how they want to come about this. We've got a problem. If I want them to really hit this one hard, I'll go to them. We need to talk about this. I've got an issue with this. I'm not sure how to come at it. I need your help on this one so that we can really get it through and play to their strengths, because I value that member of my team. I look at my team as I'm responsible for them and they're responsible for getting the job done.
Mm.
So I empower them to do their work. I give them everything they need and let them strive. I want them to be better. I want them to be awesome. I want them to come through and take my job. I want them to retire me.
Yeah.
I'm building, like you always say, I'm after the better outcome. Doesn't matter whether it's for a client, person in my team, good friend of mine, someone I've just met. It's irrelevant to me. I'm always after that better outcome, which means I want them, if that's their area of strength, I'll take it to them, their area of expertise. How are we going to do this? Hit me with it and see where they go with it. See how they go. Give them the good reasons why as well.
Yeah.
If we get pushback on it, if we go with a plan and we get pushback on it, I've got to go and find out why, come back and explain it. So that's the way I would attack that.
Mm.
Is that something something around the lines of the way you do it?
Yeah, I like that approach. I like the approach, particularly. I think that there's a high degree of value to doing that and doing it well, particularly when you recognize people for their particular skill sets already. I think that's awesome. It's like if you've laid the ground early on with regards to, that so and so is brilliant with this, and this, and they know that now it's a legitimate reason why you would go and have that conversation. And I think that people want to be recognized for their skill sets. They
Absolutely.
really do. People want to be recognized for how they perceive themselves. If I see myself as very, very good with PowerPoint or Excel, and you say, "Oh, I've got a problem with Excel," "Oh, Paul is the person to come and speak to," it's like, yes, I am. Fantastic. I've been recognized for it. Now, I think there's a few other things that go into that as well. I think there's a high element of that. I think everybody's wanting to be recognized. We're all wanting to be seen for our positive traits. And I think a lot of the time people are nervous about identifying what they believe to be their positive traits. And I think that ties in with inspiration as well a lot of the time. But if you can really see people for how they want to be perceived, and they know that you perceive them like that, then I think that's a phenomenal skill set in management. In leadership. Sorry, maybe we should use that term, just because we define them like we did a little bit earlier. But I think that's a beautiful way of doing it. Because I think people want to be seen for the positive things that they bring, truthfully, honestly, and ethically. Now, if somebody's not delivering and you go and tell them they are delivering, there's going to be some issues there. Just to be nice, but it's like, listen, if you're not doing what you need to do, we need to have a further conversation. But when people are really doing well with what they're doing, recognizing for that, and I think human behavior that's rewarded is repeated as well. So
especially cool. If you always tell me that I get along really well with people.
You do.
I
Absolutely.
Always do. I always get along. For some reason, I manage to find out and dig down into people and just get along with them really well. And the amount of times that a problem's come up and I'll turn around and go, "Oh, we'll get Mike to do it. He's really good at this."
Yeah.
Everyone will look at me. Mike will be standing there just, "What are you talking about? Oh, you've done this before. You've told me you've done this before." Mike doesn't realize he's done it before. I know that he's done it before. I'm helping. There's been quite a few times where it's like, I'm showing you how good you are. I know you've done this before. Wow. You don't want to speak up. This is the value you bring to this team, mate.
Yeah,
or not, whether you're scared of saying it or whether you got inhibitions around, you don't even realize that you've done it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do so much that you don't even realize you've got that skill or you forgot it. And they've mentioned it in a passing conversation and I remember it and I go, "Oh, hey, he's done it." Like, "Oh, really? Okay, yeah, it's the same as what you did there, but just slightly different. We'll just do it." Oh, and all of a sudden they're off and running. Yeah. So that's I don't know how I did that, eh? I've done that a few times.
Mate, honestly, I think that I think that your ability to connect with people is right up there with absolute some of the best communicators I've seen, and to be fearless in how you engage people as well. I think it's like you have that ability, and it's at like a networking event or something like that. And I know you've done a lot of Toastmasters and stuff like that. I could see how you could, at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, everybody would know your name, particularly if you're going under the nickname, under the name Cuz as opposed to Craig. You definitely look more like a Cuz than a Craig. But anyway.
Yeah, there's always a way in. The other thing about, you mentioned it earlier about how we're negatively wired. And you said you said something along the lines of, "Oh, Paul, why have you done this again?" And your brain gives you an answer.
Yeah.
There's another way of looking at that, the positivity. Send your brain out for the answer. If you ask it a question,
yeah,
"Why am I always like this? Why can I never do this?" It'll tell you, like you said, because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But if you say, "How am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
I'm going to learn this," your brain will go, "Oh, yeah, let's go and find out."
Yeah.
So you got to try. It's like you always say, reframe it. Frame the question better, frame your mentality, try and get that your brain headed in the right way. Negativity, it compounds really fast. So you got to try and turn that around, reframe it, and go. So
Absolutely.
that's a little thing I'll add in there.
It's near on impossible for you to ask yourself, or somebody to ask you a question, or you to ask yourself a question without your brain going away and finding an answer.
Yes.
And the thing is that when we understand that, and it's like, okay, well, let me start framing things up positively. Because if you're going to talk to yourself, listen, number one thing I think, and I was thinking about it today, it's like you have to be your own best mate, for real. I mean, I think there is so much happiness, and this was something that I learned maybe 17 years ago, 18 years ago now. But being your own best mate, man, because, let's be warm and fluffy and say, yeah, that's nice. Everybody's going to, people are always going to help you out. But there's a lot of time where when you're going through hell, other people got their own things to worry about as well, But if you got your own back, and I don't think any of us like ourselves to start with in this life, but afterwards you start focusing on some of the things that you do like about yourself, and that grows. And when you're your own best mate, I think that everything else is nice, is all the good people that come into your life afterwards, I think, are great from there, and the added friendships. But here's the other thing. Now we're going off into a little bit of a tangent. So if we need to come back.
Yeah, this is the good stuff, people. This is the good stuff.
I think that your relationship with yourself very often will dictate who you interact with and who you attract to yourself as well. If they say, there's a saying, misery loves company. And certainly there's been times in my life where I've been in a very, very, very negative state in my mind. And it was certainly illustrated in my life as well. But it was also, whilst I was very often, I think I've been able to keep good people around me, I certainly wasn't associating with all those good people, And I think very often how we feel about ourselves dictates who we attract into our lives as well. And I'm not talking about sort of woo-woo law of attraction here, although there's something to be said for that as well, I'm sure. But if you're good character and you're associating with people who are not positive, not doing good things, then it's going to become kind of rough to have a good life,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think that getting to like yourself in some way, shape, or form, I think it's an absolute stabilizer. It really is, Yeah.
I've bumped into that recently a couple of times with the readings I've been doing around habits.
Okay.
Yeah, or there was one, and he used to refer, like you said about how we never like ourselves.
Yeah.
At start. There's something that's been going on in my mind there about tall poppy syndrome. About there's something that I can't quite get. So I'm going to chase that one down. About how, like, especially in like Australia, everyone likes to, try and chop everyone down. So maybe that's got something to do with it. I can't quite get it yet. But I think it was James Clear, who is Atomic Habits, I think. Don't quote me on this one, because it might have been the guy who coached Kobe. I can't remember him. But anyway, he had a terrible relationship with himself. He used to call his inner voice chairman of the board, and it was ruining his life. It was going off at him really, really. He would just, the things that he would say to himself and punish himself mentally, were terrible. So it took him a while to turn it around, but he got help. And what they did was, he said every time, I think it was a therapist said to him, every time you hear yourself saying that, you have to stop, literally mentally stop, and talk to yourself how you would talk to your best friend.
Yeah.
He was saying that about himself. So if you've got your best friend in front of you and you could hear him saying these things to himself out loud, you would think, he'd have to think to himself, no, this is how you talk. And it took him months to do this. In the end, all of a sudden he realized that he used to call him chairman of the board. He wasn't even in the room. And it changed everything about where he went about things. So that relationship with yourself is terribly important.
Absolutely.
Of all the active listening you do, you listen to yourself most every day, whether you like it or not. So
I think there's a lot of people don't realize that they talk to themselves. They're not actually aware of their thought processes. And when they do, then they start realizing how very often we can be our own worst enemy. We really can, and it's like, and when you learn to control that, and really it comes down to so much what we're focusing on, you can really when you've made peace with yourself and you are your own best friend and you got your own back, hey, there's not much you can't do, I think. There's
That's
not much
it.
you can't do.
Absolutely. I learned the hard way when I started running. My
Yes.
brain. We
Yeah.
talked about it. Jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu. We go to jiu-jitsu Tuesdays and Thursday nights. I'd wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and my brain would go, you can't go to jiu-jitsu tonight. You wake up.
Yeah.
The excuses that would come up with the best one. I had to laugh because it was getting some of the pathetic things that came up with. I was running around a lake near us. I drove down there, and every time I went down there, I used to park in the same spot. It wasn't my spot. It had nothing to do with me. I just used to like where I parked. I turned in, and there was another car parked there, and my brain went, I'll turn around, someone's parked in your spot. And I was just like, really? That's pathetic. Like that,
Oh, God.
it blew me away. But what it really opened my mind to was how often every little thing that transpired during the day, there was this negative voice attached to it, trying to say these little things, always nagging. Once you can turn that off or redirect it into, I'll never be able to do that, becomes, well, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
That way it's not closed off. It's positive.
And there's someone else who's been able to achieve it. And if somebody else has been able to achieve it, broadly speaking, I mean, listen, I'm never going to run a sub 11 for the 100 meters. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
but it's
even if you threw me out of a plane, I do 11.
But it really comes down to that aspect of being prepared to learn about the stuff, and if somebody else has been able to do it, why can't I do it? Of course you can. Yep. If you're prepared to go for it. But again, a lot of people, and I'm hoping it's not too many people who listen to this right now thinking, oh, well, it's okay for you to say X, Y, and Z. It's like, listen, that is your mind just getting in there and telling you, no, put the brakes on, stay in that comfort zone. Away. And that's a dangerous place to be, man. Jeez.
Yep. I grew up, now that theory was my grandfather's theory. My mum's dad, great man, no longer with us, but he was a farmer, lived in a small coastal town. But him, my paternal grandfather, my papa, my dad, all my uncles, they had the mentality of someone else has done this, someone else can fix this, I can do it too. Now, I may not be able to do it 100%, may not be professional, but it'd be good enough and have a go. Yeah. Like the farmers, where you're miles away from anything in your tractor, but you've got to be able to have a crack at fixing it. And when you become that when you grow up around that, it just becomes natural. For me, someone at work today, one of the knuckle booms wouldn't start. I went down and had a look. They couldn't get it going. Played around with it for a bit. Opened it up. Found a jump starter. Hooked the battery up. Off she went. Guys are going, how do you know how to do that? You're a carpenter. Yeah, I'm just a carpenter though. Don't box yourself into that little area. Yeah. Be the person who can go and do it. Find out about it. There's so much out there to learn.
Now, what do you reckon about this, Cuz? Just going back to that farmer mentality, and I know we started this conversation out on leadership, but
yes, this is how it rolls, people.
Yeah. With regards to the farmer mentality, because I'm fascinated by farmers and obviously grew up in an area where there was a fair few farmers in the community. And farmers you can't tell a farmer nothing that's not accurate. You can't I can't think of any farmers I know who would ever fall for a get-rich-quick scheme kind of thing. Yeah. Because they know there's a time to reap, a time to sow, all of this, and it has to be done. It's not that you tried hard, it's whether you got the result. Did you get the harvest in or not? Yes. You can try as hard as you want, but if you didn't get it done, you didn't get it done. The thing is as well, with that mentality, it's a back to the wall type of situation. If this doesn't work now, then that's the cost. So I don't have any other options. I have to try and get this sorted. And I think that is, I think it's a growth mindset that is forged by getting kicked out of your comfort zone, because there is no comfort zone, particularly when you're farming for, you're a professional grower, you're a professional farmer. You've got things like locusts and, pests that are going to try and take it, and maybe the rains don't come, and, you've got all these other elements that are completely outside of your area of control significantly. So what is in your area of control or your area of influence, you have to make damn sure you get right. And if that comes down to fixing the borehole, you've got to be able to do that.
You have to be able to do it. I would say well into the high 90 percentile of farmers I have met in my life are unflappable. Absolutely unflappable.
What do you mean by unflappable?
Unflappable in terms of they are very controlled in their reactions. And I think it's come about of learning the hard way and not rushing into big decisions, and just that's the way it is. Like you said, if I don't get these seeds in the ground now,
yeah,
got no money next year. So these seeds are going in the ground and they make it happen. And that's it. And once you get into a point where you know that no matter what you come up against, there's an answer for.
Yeah.
You don't need to come out of your mind straight away. Yeah. There's an answer for it. Someone else has done this before. I've been through tough times in the past. I know I can, it's not the end of the world. You get into that mindset, you become unflappable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's the same way you can approach leadership and business is someone else has done this before. There's always a way. It may not be the best way right now, and it may not have the best consequences, but this is what we have to do. If it doesn't work, we'll have to go again. Nothing teaches you a better lesson than failure.
Yeah. And also, the thing is, particularly with farmers as well, they very much, it's a legacy business. And what I mean by that is it's, from... it's in the family, and again, you grow up on a farm, you spend time learning, you learn from day dot exactly the best way to get these things done. And I suppose that's a lot of leadership of self as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, hard conversations, getting teams to gel, hard conversations, all more traits of leadership skills that good leaders have to have. We've talked briefly about communication. The hard conversations is something that we both seem to think has fallen away, where people shy away from hard conversations a lot of the time lately. I don't know whether you've seen it drop off a lot, but I don't know, it goes back to what we've already talked about, but yeah, I think there's ways of approaching hard conversations too, and how you frame it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely a structure to it. I'll tell you this. This would be. I'll go back to June of last year. With regards to difficult conversations. And the thing is in this role, I'm sure I've said this before as well. In this role that I'm so fortunate to be in, that I love every single day of the work I do. I really do. I love my clients so much. I love all the different people that I work with to such a degree, and the results they're getting, nothing makes me happier. But seeing the patterns, you start seeing a lot of patterns. You start seeing trends in markets. And during COVID, of course, we saw huge things like that, particularly around how to communicate virtually, how to move people on and, keep people moving forward and keeping morale right, and dealing with things like righteous indignation and stuff like that.
Yes.
But one of the fascinating things was June of last year. So this was obviously after COVID, hopefully some degree of normality. I had 3 different conversations with 3 different heads of people leadership. Now, that could be HR. I think one was a CEO, and one was the head of P&C, people and culture. And 3 separate conversations in 1 month, where they were talking about their teams were not willing to have, they had people in their teams who needed training because they were not willing to have difficult conversations. And, you hear something once, it happens. That's what goes on. You hear something twice, maybe it's coincidence. 3 times. Now we got to look into this a little bit deeper. I had deeper conversations, and the response that I got back from the clients was, listen, a lot of my team are terrified of offending someone, so they won't even have the conversation. Because we've got to understand that if we're going to have different points of view on something, we have to understand that people are. If I don't always agree with your point of view, it's nothing personal. It means that basically I've got some other ideas that you don't. But people are so terrified of being labeled as offensive or what have you. And here's the thing: I understand it. I understand, and I see it a hell of a lot. I really do. I see it a hell of a lot. But what my job is to build that confidence in people very often, and then teach them the structures to have those more difficult conversations. But here was a terrifying thing that was happening. These conversations are going on. These conversations weren't being had And these small problems that could have been dealt with in a difficult conversation, or a conversation that was a little bit a little bit challenging, they could have been dealt with, and dealt with that challenge, that problem, that monster, when the monster was small. So I always say to my leadership, get the monster when the monster is small,
Yes.
before the monster gets big. But of course, as time goes on and nothing's being said, that monster's getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it's boom, and then we have issues, and then we have big issues. That's the kind of thing that from time to time can end up in lawsuits, can end up in professional indemnities claims, all of these things. So people being so terrified of being deemed as offensive, where it's like, okay, firstly, I understand the fear, I understand where it comes from, but secondly, I have to reframe this. You're in a leadership position. You're responsible for how the team's going, how the results and everything like that. Having a different point of view or supporting somebody to get better outcomes, change their approach, doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be a screaming match, and I think this is where very often when we become unresourceful, we go to that negative state. But if we have the confidence to be able to deal with it and the right approaches, then it's, listen, let me have this conversation with you because I can help you get those better outcomes. And when I can reframe that with people who are battling with this, I can get them to see that it's an opportunity to help somebody actually move forward. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be offensive or anything, but our minds go to that place. And it's different, man. We go back 30, 40 years ago, and there was a very sort of, maybe we could use the term militaristic approach to leadership. And there people had no problems having these difficult conversations. We're in a different world now, and rightly so. But if people are not having conversations that need to be had, that monster gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that monster is a nightmare to go and deal with when it comes down and plunders your village rather than going to its cave. You know what I'm saying?
Is that, do you think that's because that the lines being blurred between personal and professional in a lot of companies where people are,
good question.
A lot of the time, I find a lot of the time that, especially at work, critique, it's not personal. It's not personal to me. It's personal about my work and what I've done.
Yeah.
How I've done it or how I haven't done it. And I'm always open to that.
Because that's a realization that you've cultivated over quite a few years, I'm willing to bet.
Yes.
Because,
but
because people say you don't take it personally, but particularly if you don't
That's always bad. That's all.
Well, if you don't have a lot of confidence in what you're doing, there's a lot of people out there that severely lack confidence. It plays out in other areas, but the confidence is not there. And here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing is anytime somebody doesn't have confidence in what they're doing, feedback feels like an attack unless it's correctly phrased, unless it's correctly communicated. But when you're confident and that professional self-esteem is good and you're world-class at what you do, then it's feedback. And then you can take it as feedback. You can bring it in. Of course, how we communicate this is going to dictate whether defenses come up or whether they go down. And when they go down, then of course, you can communicate well, you can get people to align with it and be more committed to it. But you're listen, in theory, you're 100% right. And every other trainer out there will tell you it's business, it's nothing personal. But when you're not confident in what you do, it feels like it's a personal attack, particularly if you've got a lot of those other pressures going on. And particularly, and then you think about real life application of this as well. If you've had conflict with the person who's giving you that feedback, they're not doing it in a very elegant manner. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say it. People will react. It's like, well, this is something personal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just oversensitive to it because I see so much of it in the workplace environment. And it's always the first thing I have to be able to deal with. Anytime I'm going to empower people to have those conversations that need to be had.
Yeah, precisely. And I think a lot of it comes down to people not. I think people when you do have a hard conversation with someone, a lot of the time you'll be surprised at how resilient people are and
yes,
how
absolutely
how they're actually that they're sitting there, they knowing that they need help with something, or they know they're having a problem. And if you go at them and get their defenses up, like you say, it's not going to work. But if you can frame it and go to them, maybe asking for their help, asking the reason why, getting the questions good, trying to understand why they've done it, everything comes out.
Yeah.
And you can, like you said, all of a sudden the gates open and off they go. They take off. But maybe it's something that's holding them back. That's what I've found a lot too, where they want to ask for help, but they don't know how to. And maybe so that's another big thing as well. So, but it comes back to that whole communication, making sure you get along well with your crew, team, whatever you want to call them.
Crew. Yeah.
But a lot of it, you're right. A lot of it, if people don't get the answer sometimes that they're after, it becomes a personal attack. And you have to understand.
It feels like it. That's what people
experience. It feels personal because it hits your ego, and it just smashes into your ego, and you're like, oh, it's not. That's not what we're after. We're after, that person's just doing their job. That's not who they are. They're just doing their job. You have to look at it that way sometimes. And sometimes, especially with what I find with being a leader, is I have to understand like the instructions that I've been given. If you tell me to do something, a lot of the time, I don't know if you've had a lot of experience with this, but in my experience, you're halfway through a job or you're into something, and all of a sudden the bosses come down and they give you these set of instructions, or they want this outcome that is just ludicrous. It's why? What are we trying to achieve here? And you've got no idea. Every time that I've had that, I go back to them. I push back, and I want to know why that is. Whether it's deadline based, whether it's incentive based, maybe the clients change their minds out of their terms, out of their hands. But if I can understand why, then I can deliver that message on better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's that. 100%.
It comes to that as well. Having said that, I do try and influence my bosses up above me. I make sure I get along with them as well as I get along with everyone else around me, so that, because they're the ones who are giving me what I need to do my job as well. So I'm working both ways.
Guys, what would you say now to somebody who's listening to this? Because I'm sure, it's something I'm always mindful of when it comes to training, and what are people potentially thinking? What are boundaries that people might be thinking about that are going to be put in their way here? And I think sometimes people might think, well, that's all very well for you, Cuz, because you've got a good relationship with your senior management, so you can push back. What would your answer be to somebody who feels they don't have a good relationship with their bosses or with their leaders? What would you say to them to go out and to actually make that better? Because here's what we want to keep people away from doing, is putting roadblocks in their way by the form of excuses, saying, well, that's fine for you, Loader, because you've effectively got a good relationship with them already. I don't have a good relationship, so I can't make these changes. How would you deal with that? Because I'm 99% sure you haven't got on perfectly well with everybody in your life.
Oh, no. No. And it's, there's been times where I've done that. It depends on the situation. If you like this job and you want to stay at it, then that's something that you are going to have to suck up, and so to speak, and you're going to have to repair that relationship.
How would you do that? How would you go out and repair that relationship?
If I would go up there and I'd ask for a sit down, whatever it is, whether it's on the job and I'd pretty much just say it's all my fault. Whatever transpired before, it's my fault because I don't understand. I've started this off on the wrong foot. We're not doing well. I need some help from you to get my job going better.
Beautiful.
You need to try and open a pathway. You need to, what most people have to understand is, like we talked about before, it's not personal. It's whether if the relationship's deteriorated to a point that you feel like it's unattainable, you got to have at least a crack at trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And the easiest way I see is if you come to someone and open up to them and say, listen, we're not getting along well. It's all my fault. I apologize. How do we move forward from here? How can you help me grow to do this? Most leaders are looking for you to, most good leaders are looking for you to push up. If you've got a bad leader and that person just doesn't want you there for whatever reason, I would lay it all down. If you can't repair that relationship, it's probably time just to move on. Toxic workplace, you're not going to get where you want. You've talked about it where you were dead-ended. Start growth learning, growth mindset. Have a look to where you can shift.
Make yourself more valuable so you have options.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have a good think. Sit down with a pen and paper. Have a good think about all the value you bring to the table.
Yeah.
Have a real good think. If you need some help, give Paul a call because he's really good at it. Pointing, helping people with that. Do that. See what your options are. But to repair a relationship, you've really got to go at it. You've got to put your ego aside. You've got to be humble, and you've got to sit there and go. In my opinion, you've got to sit there and go, all right, I stuffed this up.
Yeah.
Basically, got to try and own the situation. It's all my fault. Most of the time, they'll go, oh, no, it wasn't your fault. I was having a bad day. Or I was copying it from him. It'll come out. But if you go in there and you go up against it and you go, listen, mate, we've got to fix this. We've got to fix this now. You, me, car park now. That's never going to work. That's never going to work. So it comes down to how you frame the conversation.
Even in the trades, yeah? Even in the trades.
In the trades. Especially in the trades. It's the way you frame it. Most people are willing to help. Most people are sympathetic and willing to help. Yeah, it's not always. But if you can go to someone and say, dude, I need your help. I've stuffed this up. Come out the wrong way. That's how I would approach it. Having said that, disclaimers, it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to work in every situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting on that because, it's very interesting when I see so many people talking about, we appreciate different points of views and stuff like that. But then they talk to me about somebody who's got such an extreme different point of view to them, and they have conflict with them. Well, why do you have conflict with them? Well, because they have different values and beliefs around how to communicate and how to interact and the way they see things and stuff like that. Well, okay, yeah, but you said that you wanted to accept that and agree with that. And people look a little bit shocked when they hear that. But it's like it goes back to something my mother said to me. I'll tell you this absolutely ruined my rant in one day. I was about 16 or 17, and I had a problem with this other kid, and from my hometown, and he and I didn't see eye to eye to say the very, very least. And I was talking about how much I disliked him and this and that, and then he must watch his step and all of this. And I don't know who I was talking. I think I was talking to one of my mates, and my mother was in the lounge next to us or something like that. And she came through and she said to me, Paul, I've heard everything you've said. And I said, so? And she goes, he sounds like a terrible boy. I said, he is a terrible boy. She goes, his mother still loves him. And I said, what? And she goes, his mother still loves him. I said, you can't say that to me. It's like, now where do I go with that? And it's like his mother. I'm thinking, well, you've just taken all the wind out of my sails, because I was right in my dislike of this guy, and you just said to me now his mother still loves him. And in reflection on that, after just like being winded, like, I thought, the truth of the matter is, if I've got conflict with somebody, there is someone on this planet who likes that person. What do they see that I don't see? Now, of course, my egotistical 17-year-old brain would just say, oh, well, his mother's clearly an idiot as well. The truth of the matter is, it's like, okay, what am I not seeing here that can allow me to communicate with this guy in a better way? And I have to be able to see that. And, and I think that's a key to being able to think, okay, I'm not dealing with a monster here most of the time, I hope. I'm dealing with somebody who I've got conflict with. How can I find a better way around this? Somebody else loves them,
And literally all it takes, sometimes I do this every day, all the different people I bump into, all different tradies on site, as soon as I can see that I'm going to have an interaction with them, all I do now is I just have a good hard think at what he wants. Just what's he going to be coming at from? Oh, okay, he's the traffic guy. His biggest problem today is going to be this. Or this is the union rep. What's he looking for? And as soon as you realize you can do that, as soon as you can turn yourself to, I can see this person coming, I've dealt with him before, or I've dealt with his role or type of person before, this is what he's going to be after. You can immediately change the way you're looking at what he wants, where he's going to come from, and you align yourself with him.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Time, go, how you going, buddy? It's going to be this kind of day, isn't it, with this traffic going on? And they'll go, yeah. Had any pedestrians walk past you today ignoring you? You go, yeah, how you been? I said, good, mate. And that's it.
Yeah. You're seeing the world through your target audience's eyes, my man.
Straight away, man.
First class stuff.
You have to, eh? You really have to.
Mate, it's worth investing in the time and the effort to develop those skills, because you just have less stress, you have less friction, you get more results, which is, you know, you have less conflict with people. If you have less conflict, you have better night's sleep.
Everybody's got to get along. Everybody's got to get along. It's so, whether or not the eventual outcome is worth more or whatnot, the journey there has been so much greater and so much more fun, especially when you think about it this way. How much time do you spend at work nowadays?
Yeah.
Spend 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. You know, that's nearly more time you're spending with your family and your love. You've got to get along with people.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it's going to be so much more fun. You get along with people. Now,
here's the last thing I'll say on that, mate. And very often we're teaching people exactly how to be able to understand somebody else's view of the world. But here's another little insight: is in past experiences, I don't know what your experience has been like this with this, but the more I get to know people, the easier it is to like them. For real, the more I get to know people, the easier it is to like them. And the crazy thing is that you sometimes have to assume that you were wrong in your previous assumptions. We don't like to be wrong. But I'm convinced the more I get to know somebody about somebody, the more I can find something that gets me to like them. And we don't need battles in life. We really don't. You know, it's not worth our time or our energy to be fighting anybody. You know, it leads to bad things.
Especially when that mentality becomes you're fighting everybody.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah.
And oh my God, what a drain.
Yeah. Everybody's got it in for me. Everybody's got it in. It's
everyone's got it in for me. Why is everyone always treating me like this? Well, it's probably you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'll tell you now, it's probably you.
Might be an indicator.
Key indicator, yeah. Oh, shucks. But you touched on it briefly, out of office. Now, as we don't like talking about COVID times because they were tough on everybody. Hopefully we've seen the back of that now.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses, especially corporate, have moved remotely.
Yep.
Now, having said that, I know it affected a lot of salespeople were affected during COVID, especially face-to-face. Guys who had to go from face-to-face to Zoom-based calls struggled.
Yeah.
Man, it affected everyone. Kids. My son was year 11 and 12.
We still haven't seen the costs of that. I think that's still going to.
I agree.
Knock through.
Now that leads me to the question of leadership remotely, Zoom calls, when you're not actually face to face, when you're out of office meetings, when you can't get the team together all in one place.
Yeah.
This is something that I have very, very little experience in.
Yeah.
I know you have a wealth of experience in this. You were ahead of the curve when it came to this with your webinars back before COVID. So I know you're well ahead of the game. Getting teams to gel, keeping them together and getting them to work, work towards common goals when everyone's spread out. You're not in the same place. Everyone's on different time schedules and trying to meet over Zoom meetings. How does that affect your leadership style? What other skills do you need to bring into that to try and incorporate to keep people motivated over?
Beautiful. Cuz I'll tell you this, the biggest area I saw that was problems was the ability to communicate via the virtual medium. I'll tell you this for nothing. It was we had during COVID with that shift. We had people who are phenomenal leaders. I mean, just beautiful people, just world-class leaders in an interpersonal, face-to-face environment. The types of people that when you interact with them, you always leave their company feeling better about yourself.
Yep.
They're world-class when it comes to face-to-face communication. Now, of course, what happened was, with everybody being isolated now, there was no more face-to-face communication.
Yeah.
So it had to start going through Zoom and through Teams and the like. And here was the crazy thing. The crazy thing was you had these great leaders who were so good face-to-face, who then had to start communicating virtually. And a lot of them would perceive themselves anyway as technophobes. Now, if you're saying that you're a technophobe and you're no good with technology, and now you have to communicate and rally the troops via technology, and you're not confident in that environment, you better believe it waters down your language.
Yeah.
So people can tell if you're not aligned with what you're saying, they'll pick up on it. Particularly, during the early days of COVID, with new systems and procedures and stuff like that were going on, and you've got leadership, you've got to lead on your leadership, particularly people who are who are battling with that aspect of that change and stuff like that. It's like they have to have good, solid, strong support, and that is communicated in a strong, in a strong, empowered manner. But if your leadership is worried about, is this camera up my nose or am I still on mute, and they're back and forth, that communication style, their power in their communication just falls by the wayside. And so we had to scramble pretty quickly to be able to make sure that we could provide. Some companies, we provided training for how to communicate virtually, because to your point, Dad, from working in Europe for so long doing webinars there, I think I'd accrued something like 2,500 hours before of webinar training.
Yes.
And virtual training and virtual communication before COVID even kicked in. So we had some companies we provided training for to get their leadership up to exactly how to communicate well virtually. Sales, we did that as well, because buyers were just getting sick and tired of poor presentations virtually. And then some businesses, what we did was we actually brought in, along with the training, we brought in a degree of accountability, so an accountability buddy for businesses. So they had some people who were graduates of universities, were very good technically, doubling up with your C-suite decision makers who obviously have a wealth of knowledge, got high profile, and they're pairing up and they're working together on communicating virtually and learning the platforms ins and outs. So there's a high degree of confidence. Yeah, it was interesting, man. It was fascinating to see. As far as what were people doing, they're looking to make catch-ups maybe on a day-to-day basis. Also, here to a point you raised a little bit earlier, I was training people to be very proactive with telling people to come back to them if they have even an ounce of concern. And what I would say is to my leadership, it's like, listen, you're going out and you're training you're training people new systems and procedures now. I want you to say to your team that you expect them to come to you, okay? Even if there's a hint of doubt. So what they would do is frame it up saying, listen, folks, now we've got a new systems and procedures because of COVID. Instead of doing A, B, and C, you now have to do X, Y, and Z. Now, this is a change. I understand it's a change. I understand that we have to do this because of the situation we're in. However, I expect you to have challenges with this. Okay, now some people might say, well, Paul, that's being negative. Okay, I get that. But what I'm saying is, if I expect there to be challenges, then I expect you to come to me when there are challenges. Okay,
Yep.
So you're just making it blatantly clear that it's like, okay, my boss, my leader is expecting me to come to them, which makes it okay. If I'm sitting there and haven't been explicitly told that, then very often people might think, well, I'm 90% sure it's the right thing to do. I don't want to go and bother my boss because I know they've got a lot of other things going on as well. So effectively, they don't go and ask for clarity. And then next thing happens, they make a mistake. They don't get it because it's a new system and procedure. So having that situation that's changed, that now gives us a logical reason why, and the systems and procedures have changed, a logical reason why now as a leader, I expect you to come to me, even if you are 99% sure there's just that 1% area of concern. And, other people listening to this might say, well, that's stupid. Poor people should always ask a question if they have a question. Yes, in theory, they should. But the fact of the matter is, it's very often, people are not in that mindset to do it, for whatever reason. So
and a lot of people won't speak up.
Again, yeah, absolutely. And again, this is with better outcomes, guys. It's like we're not teaching for what should happen, or what people should do. I'm teaching with regards to what does happen.
Yes.
There's, in an ideal world, yes, everybody put their hand up. But I know, and we all know, if we've had the experience in business, people won't always put their hand up in that circumstance.
Agree, especially when you have a leader or a boss that everyone's intimidated by.
Yep.
Or people are intimidated by, not everyone, and he's saying, all right, instead of doing ABC, you've got to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Anyone got any problems with that? No one says anything. Everyone has a problem. No one says anything. Whereas if I was to take that, I would go, all right, guys, we were doing ABC. Now we've got to do X, Y, Z. I know I've got some problems with this. I'm going to struggle with this one. I really am. I need your help that we can sort this out and we can make it so we can work it in. All right. So have a think about it. What are some of the concerns you've got? Because I know I've got mine. I've already written a couple down, and it puts you on the same page with everyone. All of a sudden, if someone says that to me, I realise they're a human being like me. They've got problems with this as well. Yeah. They're not standing there being a dictator saying this is the way, it's the highway, my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I've got a problem with this, on the same page. Oh, well, that might get the more, the more confident people to go, hey, listen, I've got a problem with this. I've got a problem with this. And that'll start a snowball effect, start them moving. But if you bring yourself down to your team's level, fine, and say, listen, we're going to struggle with this. How are we going to make this fit what we do? So that's how I'd approach that kind of thing. And I know, especially with Zoom, I'm still new to Zoom. And I didn't really need to do a lot of Zoom over. I was very lucky over COVID because I stayed working right through. I worked in hospitals.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. So I got a lot of face-to-face. So two things. The curious thing I found, and it was beautiful too. I worked in hospitals. I was around doctors and nurses and patients and the best people in the world. They deserved, regardless of which way you look at it, and all the divisions we had, those people went through some really tough times and were awesome. And yet I remember one day I was at the Alfred Hospital and hop into an elevator, and there's a young girl in there. Now, I'm nearly 50. She would have been in her 20s. And I got in, and you had to stand on these spots in the elevator. So I went to the back.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there, and she just looked. We all had masks on and everything, and she was all dressed up, and she just looked really happy. There was like a bubbliness coming out of her. And I said to her, you look very happy today. And she goes, oh my God, I've just had the best job interview. And I think I stood outside the elevator with her for a good 15 minutes while she talked to me, because she was that was the first time she'd been out of her house in about a month.
Wow.
First interactions with people.
Yeah.
And she was just looking for someone to talk to.
Yeah, sure.
Stood outside our 1.5 distance and got our spot and talked. But the amount of people who missed that, just that interpersonal connection,
absolutely
was crazy. And I got so little work done some days because you're standing there talking to people, but who cares about that?
It's like people saving up to the time they get to see something.
It was. And I knew everyone was struggling because when I got home, all my kids would be like, "Hey, Dad, how was your day at work?"
Yeah.
But the other thing that I'm like one of those, I would suggest I'm like one of those great leaders, and you put me on digital. When I first started, I struggled with the body language because there was a big chunk of it's taken away, how I read people.
Yeah.
So all you can see is this much. I can't, depending on how you framed it or where you're sitting, it takes a lot of the emotion out of it too. So that was something that I had to try and get my head around. So that and meetings, some of them are so boring. I struggled to some of the meetings I had to have. I don't even know why I was in them.
Yeah, well, that was a common trait. I think it was something I heard a hell of a lot during COVID. Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to be in this, man. You'd just about be drifting off, and I'm not sure I'm designed for meetings, if I'm perfectly honest.
You know what, Cuz, I say that people be engaged with you when you talk in terms of benefits to them or how it impacts them. Then they're interested. So
yeah, there you go. Okay.
Anyway, my man, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up there.
Nearly. Nice try again. As always, recommendations or takeaways. What have you got for us around leadership? What are your big things to concentrate on? Any books or learning? Obviously, they need to contact Better Outcomes and take a leadership course. What have you got for us?
As far as leadership goes, my best recommendation for anybody in leadership, and this is always a question I ask at any of the workshops I run, is what people want to take away. And there's, I get people who are not really, I use this to identify who's committed to the learning, who I still have to work on a little bit. But people who say, oh, I'm just here to brush up on skills, on leadership. It's like, or, oh, I'm just interested in new learnings. It's like, listen, give me something specific. What area of leadership are you battling with? Are you battling with the ability to have difficult conversations? Are you battling with the ability to present an idea? Are you battling with the ability to influence up, down, and sideways? What are the particular areas? Are you battling with strategic thinking and critical thinking and problem solving? What are the particular areas? So my best recommendation would be to anybody who's listening to this, ask themselves that question. What is this area that I'm battling with in leadership? And then go out and get an audiobook or something like that. And anytime you're busy, but your ears aren't busy, be listening to that stuff. But even if it's just flowing over you and you're not listening to it word for word, because I can nearly guarantee this, somewhere along the line, and certainly it's been my experience, I've asked questions of myself with regards to thinking processes and stuff like that, and there's been answers that have come to me that I don't even know where they came from. And then I hear it again later on in one of the audiobooks I'm listening to again, and I'm convinced on some way, shape, or form it's gone into my head like that. It's created that additional idea. That would be my suggestion. My recommendation is to get an idea of where is the area that you want to improve on, and be specific, and then go out and get an audiobook on it or seek some training particularly on it. Because here's what I can nearly guarantee: that area that you're battling with right now, it's something you don't enjoy doing because maybe naturally you're not good at it. But soon you become good at it, you turn that weakness into a strength. And as soon as that starts happening, you start thinking, if I can get this right, and I've got 3 or 4 other areas that I need to improve on, what kind of a leader can I become in the future? And that's a beautiful place to be. That's really the epitome of that growth mindset, which is phenomenal. That's
pretty much where I'd go to. Leadership to me is about dragging others up with you. We kind of like our jiu-jitsu gym around the corner, we all rise together. So that's 100%. The way I look at it. So I would suggest the basics as well, like set your ego aside, get that growth mindset working, exactly what you've talked about, active listening, getting to know your team up and down the chain. That's very important, I think, up and down the chain. Other groups you've got to work with, other businesses you've got to work with. Get your relationships right, and get those bad areas, like focus on that bad area, get rid of that. Good relationships up and down the chain, and then learning just to another good one is learning to defer to other people's areas of expertise.
Yeah, I like that. Really like that.
That one, I've always been a fan of that, even if it means, especially if it means putting others before yourself. Like if you can do it better, or you can do it good, but that person is very good at it or getting better at it, let them have a go.
Absolutely.
Get them out there. So appreciate your time. Again,
100%.
It's been a big week. Stay tuned, folks. More to come. We're not even sure what we're talking about next time. I'm not even sure what we talked about this time. Hopefully some nuggets for you.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much, mate. Take care. Cheers, folks.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.